So one of my beliefs is that our subconscious really lives in the body and our nervous systems. It's not just like in our mind, right? And like the body remembers what the mind may forget. And so I think a lot of books out there are really focused on creating like great mental discipline and let's uncover your limiting beliefs and let's clear it all and like tell yourself positive affirmations. I believe that if you have these deep beliefs that are held in your body level, sensations of insecurity, sensations of shame, sensations of fear, you can tell yourself I'm amazing all day long and it will feel like you're lying to yourself.
What's up, everybody? You're listening to the Hustle and Flowchart podcast with your boys, Matt Wolf and Joe Fear.
All right, Victoria, how you doing? Great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
For sure.
Excited for this.
Well, I know we were like pre-chatting and
I know. I was like, we should hit record probably.
yeah. It's always a good sign. Like something good's gonna come out already. Like we were like, we got to share more of this stuff here. Yeah. So, big shout out to our friend Esther Kiss for making this happen. So thank you, Esther. I know you check it out. Yeah, but you, Victoria, you have a really interesting background, and all the way from I know your schooling time, in university at least, and then getting into business, and then this whole pivot into really learning from a bunch of coaches and therapists and all this stuff. But you wrap it into these massive companies. Like we're reading some of the case studies of your work, like Honey, for instance, that app that probably everyone's using now on the computer, and like just the
free
shifts
money,
you've done.
Why not?
I know, right? It's a great company. But the fact, like, just these little pivots that you're helping folks with their mindset, their nervous systems, the way they're thinking, and how they can build some greatness, whatever they're doing. So happy to share all that here, and kind of want to see what your story was like before getting into the game. You have a new book also going to come out soon. I wanted to give that a shout out. Bending Reality in August, right?
Yeah, August 24th. How to make the impossible probable.
Woo woo. It's a cool book name, and it looks very interesting. So take us back, though, to, I don't know, wherever you feel like university, it sounds, because you went to Harvard and Yale, right? Harvard Business School. So take us back to there, because you say you learned a lot more from the coaches after school, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I think, without even realizing it, I was just so in the rat race. Just as soon as I kind of left the family nest, I went to Yale College for university, and then I went to Harvard Business School, and I'm very grateful that I've achieved a lot. But I think when you get into venture capital at 23 and you start having all these opportunities that are super rare at a young age, you also really quickly realize, like, wow, is there more to life than this? Like succeeding, achieving. And I felt like the more I achieved, the emptier I actually felt, which was such a strange phenomenon. And for a bit, I thought like there was something wrong with me, because I was thinking like, gosh, I should be grateful. I should be happy. So many people look over at me and think I have the dream job being a venture capitalist. So like, what's wrong with me? Like, why aren't I happy? And it took me a little bit to sit with that question and give it more weight than I think any of my peers were really like kind of making space for at the time. And the truth is, when I looked around at my colleagues and my classmates from Yale and Harvard and a lot of our clients who are successful entrepreneurs who are billionaires, I realized like, wow, everyone has this sort of empty success syndrome, And so that insight really was an existential awakening for me, where I realized, wow, I want to do more and I want to understand this better. Like, why is it this way? Like, what's keeping it this way? And how come no one talks about it? And how do we go to work 9 to 5 every day when like these are our family members and our friends who are really unfulfilled, but all kind of pretending like we're all good, we're all really busy, So that became the question that I was more interested in getting to the bottom of than just like, how do we make you epically successful? In VC, we're really focused on the business and, the business model, scaling the business, making sure it's as profitable as possible, really good exit. But for me, I was like, why are these entrepreneurs so empty even after they've made it? And how can we solve for that? Like, how can we be epically successful and deeply fulfilled? And so that was in 2016. And I left VC without really knowing exactly what I was going to do about it, but it was just clear that part of my journey and exploration was going to be figuring out how I can support in some capacity around this question. And then that led me to getting certified myself, because as you read, I've worked with over 24 coaches, and these kind of answers didn't come from, institutions, even the finest ones. They really came from studying with healers, therapists, coaches, from life coaching, business coaching to sex coaching, truly like the whole gamut. So yeah, that's what I realized after investing hundreds of thousands of dollars and a decade working with these coaches. And I'm hoping to save my readers the time, money, and energy that I did in giving everything really in this book.
No, I think it's super smart with the fact that you're diving in on something that everyone experiences, like the whole like not happiness or fulfilled with success. I know we've struggled with that.
It's been a reoccurring thing on this podcast, actually. Quite a few of the super successful people that we brought on that have made millions of dollars, some even making millions of dollars a month, are talking about how empty it feels and how the only thing that helped them get through it was things like psychedelics or therapy or something like that. So it definitely seems to be a pretty common thing among a lot of the really, really high achievers that we've had on here.
I'm kind of curious, just really fast too. Like, I know you had a lot of success at a young age in the VC world. Like, what kind of success are we talking? Like, just to kind of give some context for folks. Because like, was there like a catalyst that was like, oh my God, this is like too much, I got to have a change? Was there like a breaking point after that?
I think one of my superpowers that has translated, and tell me if the mic is good. One of my superpowers that has translated to my work now is I've always been a really good read of people, which at the early stage investing, when it's just a pitch deck and a founder, is really the idea and the person that you're betting on. And that was the stage I was investing in, was early seed, like first institutional money into a company. And so the average check size was like $250,000, $500,000. And so one of my first deals called Crashalytics, I put in about $1 million and we returned over $40 million from that one company investment.
Right on.
And so I have made a lot of people lots of money, angel investors and VCs alike. And that's actually what allowed me to be named to the Forbes 30 under 30 list for venture capital investing. And so I've been really grateful. And I think part of my journey was fated this way so that I could do what appeared to be, accolades and success to the outside world, but then feeling that disconnect on such a deep level, and it's one thing to say like, oh, I feel empty. But, then people are going to be like, what have you achieved? And so I feel like coming from my background, like going to Yale, going to Harvard Business School, doing the things that everyone thinks are the obvious things that are successful and feeling the way I do, I think really lends me like a real perspective on like, it really is. There's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And it really is like the blind leading the blind, like I've been there and truly like, this is how it feels.
No, it's almost like I'm just thinking of like the moon landing effect. It's like you've gotten this accomplishment and you're like, what now? And yeah, it sounds like you've hit a lot of the markers. I mean, even on the education front, the success or the business front, even the accolades like 30 under 30 for Forbes. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's more like a compounded thing for you to realize like, okay, there's like a deeper thing here I got to dig into and figure out for myself.
Yeah.
So is that pretty much, I mean, right. So I'm curious about the 24 coaches, like you mentioned all these therapists and whatnot. Like, what did you start doing? Like, did you just start practicing a whole bunch of stuff yourself? Like, were you a guinea pig or?
I do feel like I was like one of those like Skinner rats where I was like, I don't know if this is it, but I'm going to keep hitting this button and like, it seems to work, I definitely went down the rabbit hole in coaching. And, I'd say that I got something out of everyone I worked with. And truly the thing that most significantly I got was just seeing all the themes and the dots that were kind of, connecting and being able to light up that picture of like, wow, there's actually a meta framework underlying peak performance, therapy, meditation, spiritual work, like there's actually this cohesive framework that is one that I talk about in the book, In Bending Reality. And it was actually one of my goals was to empower the reader who's interested in this to know truly what is everybody actually teaching, like what does everyone have a different way of getting at, so that they would feel more empowered when they hire people to know like, what am I what am I really signing up for versus like feeling broken, feeling lost, feeling that you have to fix yourself, which I think can send a lot of people down, a rabbit hole of sorts that can feel very painful because it feels like no matter what they do and how much they learn, they never are healed. And so I really wanted the reader to, have this bigger picture so they can be more self-empowered on their path. Yeah. And then as far as the coaches I've worked with, let's see, I was in business school at the time. And what I thought I needed, it's very common for people to enter coaching because they have like a tactical problem. Like for me, it was like, oh, I want to be a better public speaker and I want to improve my speaking skills. And so I started asking around for a coach that could help me with that. And before I knew it, another friend who's a VC over at Forerunner Ventures, Yuri Kim, was like, oh, I don't have one of those, but I have a life coach. And then I was like, what's a life coach? And, this was back in 2013. So 8 years ago, I didn't know what a life coach was. And then I quickly learned what they do. And I started I had like 4 at a time sometimes. I got so into it. I became obsessed, honestly, such a power user of coaches. And it changed my life. Like, I really think that my life can be almost like divided up into pre-coaching era, like me kind of half asleep, autopilot, walking through life. And then getting all this amazing insight and wisdom from coaches. And now I'm living such a conscious, chosen life of like designing this incredible life and work. And it really ripples out into my clients and just such huge up-leveling around, everyone around me that I get to work with. So anyway, I think coaching, I recommend it for everyone listening. So I'll let you dive in. Sure. Sorry, I'm like, I could take this anywhere.
You're good. No, we'll get you.
Well, I'm curious. You mentioned there's kind of like a framework that sort of underlies all the different, modalities, I guess you could call them, of like, therapeutic education. Is there what are some insights around that framework that you can share? Like, what were some of the patterns, the overlaps that you noticed between all of those different things?
Okay. So first I'll ask both of you to do this. Just imagine in the last week, what's something that may have happened that didn't feel good. Maybe it was a mistake or brought up some sense of fear or sense of failure or something that just, could have gone better. And when you tune into that event, I want you to just feel into the sensation in your body. Like, what do you notice happening when you recall this unpleasant event?
I think I tense up a little bit. Yeah.
I get kind of more of a tightness in my stomach.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. So this state is one that I call contraction, so this constrictive energy pattern. And for me, I talk about in the book how this activates our fight flight response. So when we're in this state, we're tense, our breathing is shallow, our options narrow, our perspective narrows. It's hard to see solution set. We feel very stuck in a perspective. And this, without realizing, is how a lot of people walk through the world, without realizing it. If you're thinking about the next problem to solve, if you're catastrophizing or thinking about worst case scenarios in your head, like so often my clients are like, I'm just imagining kind of the worst case scenario happening. Like it's not even the event. It's like after the event, they're still thinking about it and spinning on it. Right.
Yeah. So this could have happened. Yeah. So they're even stressed about what could have happened that didn't happen.
Totally. And there's almost this sense of like a safety that comes with such vigilance of like, oh, as long as I'm preparing and impending doom generator, trying to in advance guess what might happen so I don't look stupid. This is where a lot of our minds are. And so this is the first state that a lot of clients find me in. And I find that all of their self solutions, like boot camp coach in their head, or gosh, I can't sleep, I'm constantly thinking about the problem. And then maybe I'll like go drink to unwind. Like all of these things actually just create poor health, poor sleep, more contraction in their system, and like a tight nervous system, as we talked about, right? So Matt Kahn has a great quote that the ego is an imaginary identity of an overstimulated nervous system.
I love that. That's a very real, I can embody that. I've lived that many times over.
Exactly. And so this is like what characterizes, I think, kind of the state of the world right now, especially in the COVID period, especially in the uncertainty, especially in the unknown. Like we're all like kind of walking around super tight, like, oh no, is the other shoe going to drop? Right. So that's the first state. And as you can imagine, there's thoughts that create the state, there's emotions that create the state, and there's all sorts of limiting beliefs or shame stories or guilt or proving oneself. Like your hustle and flow. I appreciate more of the flow piece of your title because, the hustle is really like, oh, I need to prove that I matter. I need to prove that I got something to give and offer in the world, right? There's this constant urgency. And truly, like when we have that time urgency, it really gets us into the scarcity mindset, which creates this contraction. So, okay, now I'm going to talk about the flip side. I want you guys to imagine an event this past week that really lit you up, where it felt like calm and amazing, happy. Maybe you were grateful that it happened. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And when you tune into your bodies and your nervous systems, what do you notice?
I just noticed a smile go across my face as soon as I thought of the moment.
Same. Yeah, I just felt lighter all overall. Yeah, it's like nervous system, like you said, is just chilled out.
Yeah.
Good. Awesome. Anything else, like with your breath, or how do you know when your nervous system is calm? What does your body feel like?
So for me, definitely it's a breath thing. So if I'm short on breath, it usually, I stay chest breathing and less belly breathing. So when I'm chilled out, it's definitely like a lot deeper breath, and I feel like just everything is a lot more relaxed. Like shoulders aren't as tensed.
Yeah.
I'm not as just like, maybe I'm not like, my legs aren't crossed, and there's like a lot of things that are like tension, like that are just like,
yeah,
exactly.
I notice I carry tension up in my shoulders and neck. So if I'm like, anxious about something, like I get real tight up here. And then when I'm, happy about something, I feel these kind of areas loosen up and just kind of drop a little.
Yeah, you both feel more grounded. You both feel lighter.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah.
So this state is one I call expansion. And so one of the first questions is just, do you feel contracted or expanded right now?
And right now expanded, yeah. So basically you're kind of teaching folks how to feel their emotions, right? Like feel their internal states. So you can kind of figure out what your brain is doing and maybe look at things slightly different, right?
Right. So one of my beliefs is that our subconscious really lives in the body and our nervous systems. It's not just like in our mind, right? And like the body remembers what the mind may forget. And so I think a lot of books out there are really focused on creating like great mental discipline and let's uncover your limiting beliefs and let's clear it all and like tell yourself positive affirmations. I believe that if you have these deep beliefs that are held in your body level, sensations of insecurity, sensations of shame, sensations of fear, you can tell yourself I'm amazing all day long and it will feel like you're lying to yourself.
Right. It's like, who's that voice in there barking at me these lies? You're like, that's not true.
It doesn't pass your own like bullshit detector of your body. Right. And so what the work that I do with my clients is like, okay, the mind's really important, but that's the tip of the iceberg. Let's also get you connected to the ideal optimal physical state to be in, the right emotional state to be in, so that you can really be in what we call peak performance or flow state or access to your supernatural abilities, or in what I say, the state from which you can bend reality. And so in the state of expansion, how much access do you have to creativity, inspiration, solution set?
I think it's pretty much unlimited.
Yeah, infinite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so in this state, we feel really good. We're inspired. We feel great. All these things, we trust more, and therefore we're also thinking about like win-win-win solutions. So I really believe that one of the key meta frameworks, I talked about is just being able to recognize where are you in this current moment? Do you feel contracted? Do you feel expanded right now? Are these thoughts creating momentum for contraction or expansion? Are these emotions creating contraction in my body? Just starting to really understand the mind-body connection. Because a lot of clients, and I'm sure in your world too, in the marketing world, are really analytical, very left brain, really intelligent. But because of that, they live in their head. And they don't really feel much going on in their body, right? So it's amazing that you do breath work. It's amazing when people do yoga, like all these things that allow us to connect more into our body. And so that is one of the key things. So I really believe that the more you spin in your head, the more is an indication that it's time to get out of your head and into feeling the sensations in your body. And like you said, the emotional processing. Because for a lot of us, we don't realize, we like to pretend like emotions, we're really stable and irrational and emotions aren't getting in the way. But the truth is, whenever there's conflict, whenever there's failure, whenever there's a difficult conversation, it is about your emotional intelligence and how well can you be with the emotional pattern that comes up, whether that's fear, anxiety, stress, and I really believe, and I'm sure you do as well, which is emotion is just energy in motion in the body.
100%. Yeah.
And that's why you can't selectively numb negative emotions to only feel positive emotions. And so when my clients find me, they often are quite numb and like living in a very narrow bandwidth of reality where they're like, gosh, I have everything I ever wanted, but I don't feel it. Like I don't feel happy. Gratitude's sort of a mental concept in my head. I don't really feel it in my body. And they don't realize that, you know, they've been preparing themselves for the ups and downs of startup world by thinking that it's a superpower to be completely numb.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I want to protect myself from the super low. So then I also don't really let myself celebrate when the highs are highs. And then they're kind of mildly depressed, you know, and they start to tell me like, I think I just don't have much dopamine. And they, you know, their mind wants to come to these scientific conclusions for what's happening. And I'm like, no, you just need to feel your emotions. Like you need to process your emotions, you know? So that is a huge part of what I teach in the book and what I teach to my clients is how can you use all emotions, even the unpleasant ones, as fuel for expansion.
No, I think it's interesting because I know for a lot of times I have walked through life, I mean, where there might be a trauma and it's like, oh, I'm resilient, or, you know, yeah, like you said earlier, affirmations. I'll tell myself these things. We actually had a buddy of ours, Kamal Ravikant, on, who is another VC up in Silicon Valley area. And he has the whole book, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. And I'm sure he experienced much of what you are saying here in the VC world, but any entrepreneur, any high achiever that's like, I can get through this. I could bust through this wall of whatever, you know, it could be like a death in the family or just like maybe a project just bombed, a product launch or something. So,
right. Let me stay numb so I don't stay too impacted by anything. But then when they do get the success, when they do get the wealth, when they do have the impact, they're like, oh, I don't feel anything about it. Gosh, like that sucks. I guess I need to make my goal bigger. I have to go after the next thing.
And that's probably a recipe for disaster as well, because like you said, it's like busy, 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 more momentum, but not tapped into here. Something like, I guess now with people with that realization, are there any suggestions on how someone, because it sounds like you've helped folks identify the feelings in their body. And I think I've read in multiple places, it's like, it's almost like depending on where you feel things in your body, it kind of means different things. Like I think it's your chest. If it's tight, it's kind of like a afraid or a fear kind of state, I believe. And I don't know. Yeah, I mean, do you know any way to identify things that way? Like after you kind of start to figure out how you're feeling?
Absolutely. So one of the first things I encourage people to do is to not get caught up in the story behind the emotion and to not even worry if you can't label it correctly. Because sometimes people are like, ooh, there's tightness in my chest. I don't know what it is. And then just trying to label it kind of confuses them and takes them out of the experience of it because now they're back in their head, you know? So I know that like it feels good. Like you get a dopamine hit for figuring something out. So sometimes therapy can be very rewarding when you're like, oh yeah, it is like that time when I was 5, you know, but then you're like, oh, but I can't change it. You know, I've been talking about this for years and I understand it, but how come it's not embodied? And there's another great quote of knowledge is only rumor until it lives in the body. And that's what I think. So getting to your question, when you feel your emotions, it's just important to drop into the energy pattern of it, you know? So right now when we were talking, you were like, yeah, I feel tightness in my chest. I feel like my shoulders rising. So first we allow ourselves to just feel that fully. And I actually encourage people to turn it up. So to go into it and like almost dial up the intensity of it. Because what happens is sometimes we're trained, you know, to feel uncomfortable when we feel these emotions. And so we pull back or we try to override them or we try to rationalize them away or, you know, try to mitigate them. And what happens is I think that when we don't allow ourselves to fully feel an emotion, it doesn't go anywhere. It's frozen in the system. Yeah. And that's why breath work is really effective, you know, as well, because it's like, how do we actually just move these energy patterns so they don't get stuck in our bodies? And so the first key thing is just relax your body, find your breath. You know, you can close your eyes, you could be sitting or lying down and you just start to tune in and say, okay, yeah, I'm feeling like it's kind of hard to breathe into my belly right now, you know, and then you just get curious and you be with the discomfort and you imagine yourself going into the center of it, kind of like when, you know, what is it? Bulls, no, ox, is it ox? Yeah, go into the eye of the storm.
Oh yeah, have you heard that? That's right. Yeah, they are bison, right? It's
bison. Yeah.
That's right.
Bison will go right into the eye of the storm, knowing that will help them get out of it faster. You know, and all the other animals are really swirled up and impacted because they want to run away and outrun the storm. You know, so one of the first things that I really encourage my clients to do is when they have the emotion, counterintuitively go into it. like really surrender into it and trust that like you can be with it. And the reason why these emotions can be very triggering is because, as you said, sometimes it's tied to a trauma. And when I say trauma, I don't even mean like capital T trauma of like this really horrific thing happened. It could just be, I believe trauma is like anything that felt too overwhelming at the time for our nervous system to process. So that oftentimes when we're kids, right, things happen and we're like, oh my God, that was really shocking, whether it's news from a parent or sometimes it's like an accident or maybe actually, being hit, whatever it was, it just was too overwhelming for the nervous system's capacity to process it in that moment. And then what happens with trauma is that it doesn't get coded to past in the history, which means then that anything that happens today that kind of reminds us or touches that trauma activates it as if it's still happening. So it's almost like this memory that's on feedback loop that keeps running. And so, for instance, just to ground this in example, like a lot of clients, they have like a fear of being out of control and not having control over situation. They need to control and predict. Like that's like their safety zone. Really true for a lot of founders. And when you dig into like why this control and predict is so important, you start to realize like, okay, like the nervous system doesn't feel safe and there's a reason for that. And then they kind of drop back. I've heard the story many times, which is that they were bullied when they were kids. And there was something really terrifying that as an adult, they're like, it wasn't a big deal. It was worse things happened to people. But as a kid, it was really intense and it did feel traumatic as a child. And so I have one client particularly that I reference in the book who notice that whenever he doesn't get his way in an agreement or in a meeting or with, a strategy, he gets very angry, and then the anger turns into stress and anxiety where he's worst case spinning and he's imagining the conversation going really badly. And we realize and tied it back to, well, yeah, because when you were a kid, you were bullied and there were these incidences where he was really scared for his life. And so now whenever he feels a loss of control, it's connected to the sense of unsafety, and feeling unsafe can feel too vulnerable to admit to ourselves. So it usually manifests as like a secondary emotion, like anger, for instance. Yeah. So it's easier, for men who associate with like the masculine to be like, I'm angry versus like, oh, that hurt my feelings or like that scared me, Right. And so his instinct was to always get angry. So anyway, I bring that up because I really want to, I guess, make clear to the listeners that more often than not, what's actually happening is tied to an emotion that we're not willing to acknowledge. And that emotion is coming up because it brings up an uncomfortable memory that we've been avoiding processing. And it's like our bodies still remember it and it's still held in the nervous system. It's still held in the subconscious. And anything in our life today that reminds us of it is going to set us back there. And the analogy that I like to give, which I reference in the book, is it's almost like when we're born, we have access to a castle with infinite rooms. But then because we don't want to feel certain emotions or certain scenarios or certain situations, we end up living in like one room that we have complete perfection mastery over. And so we've just shut off this whole diversity of life to live in this one perfect room. And like that's what it looks like to choose to actually create your own little cage or your own prison, where it's a very conditional, fragile existence. And so one of the things I really teach is like, how can we make you anti-fragile, where it's like your emotional system is so resilient that you can ride the ups and downs of life and you're not trying to control and predict life, but you know how to stay calm in uncertainty, your nervous system unraveled in any unknown, so that you can see and access creativity and solutions where other people are so uncomfortable sitting in that uncertainty. They're kind of grabbing for a false sense of certainty and control. So that is why I believe the clients I work with get these phenomenal outcomes. Like, one of my clients, he said, honey, they just got sold for $4 billion. And it's like the ability to keep your nervous system expanded and calm to access solutions that your competitors don't see. Or another client, Helix Nano, they just developed a next generation COVID vaccine that is evolutionary resistant. So it doesn't have the problems the current vaccines have with the evolution of COVID. So they were able to create like an amazing next generation vaccine without having worked on vaccines prior. And it's because they're able to sit in a level of uncertainty that I think most of our nervous systems are not wired to handle.
Interesting. Yeah, because it's like if you stay in your perfect room, your self-designed, room in your mind or your prison. Yeah, you have blinders. Of course you're going to get rattled if like maybe your business got shooken up a little bit during the COVID thing, or maybe there's an opportunity over here that's calling for you, like this company, like the COVID vaccine. It's like, well, now they're able to be like, okay, well, maybe I can pivot or like kind of tweak some of my resources over here to identify that need or do something about it. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, what do you do with the information, like when it comes to things like therapy and even sort of psychedelic experiences and things like that? You might get like a flood of insights and ahas and like, oh, I'm like this because this happened in my past, and you kind of get these like ahas and insights of information in your brain, but then the integration portion, like after that experience, like what do you do with the information that you've just uncovered about yourself in your past that you know is now holding you back? Like what would be the next steps after figuring that stuff out?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that these insights, I like to say that it's coming up to your awareness because your nervous system is now expanded or relaxed enough that you're able to see that truth. Because I do believe, like when we talked about the ego being an imaginary identity of an overstimulated nervous system, when our nervous systems are tight, we don't see these insights. Right. We have all these blind spots, and like we're just like, ouch, that triggered me, and like there's like a landmine of triggers that we're so unaware of. Right. And then when we get upset, we point our finger out there, and we're like, I'm going to blame that person or that situation. I'm unhappy because this event happened. And then to your point, you start to realize like, oh, I should point my finger inward and realize that like I'm co-creating this, or I'm showing up this way because of this. And so first, I think it's super important to just actually celebrate and acknowledge and have a lot of acceptance and compassion to like, wow, this was me when I was doing the best I knew how. Like this used to work for me because of whatever my situation was. This was a great coping mechanism that I'm hitting like a ceiling with now. And I think, again, like when you feel it at the emotional level, it really does get released from your system. So a lot of the clients who find me, they're actually deep in therapy. They've read all the books. They've talked about their problems, but what they're missing is they haven't yet felt and released the emotional, energetic patterns at the nervous system level. And so to answer your question, I think once you start to process and feel it to completion in its entirety, because what happens is if our nervous system is tight, we're almost afraid to feel it because we're afraid it's going to be too much. We're afraid we're going to short circuit. We're afraid that we can't handle it. It just feels like it's going to be too uncomfortable. It almost feels like suffering on this side of feeling it. Like before you feel it, it feels like the idea of feeling it would be like suffering.
Pre-suffering.
But the truth is, once you feel it, how do you guys feel after you've like felt an emotion in entirety? Maybe you cried, maybe you screamed. How do you guys feel after?
It's a total release. Because I just did that yesterday. I mean, I feel like I try to do that often, but yeah, like with the modality, you have to like lean into that, and it's fucking hard because like it's uncomfortable. Your body might be even freaking out, or I mean, I don't like you might have reflexes in your body even that.
Yeah, you might feel nauseous. You might be like, oh my God, I want to throw up,
Well, that's literally like something that happens to me is like if I feel like, and I don't think I've ever really talked about this on the podcast, but like I'll do breath work and think about something specific and maybe lean into that thing and visualize it. And like yesterday, like it was kind of being seen was like the thing for me for some reason, but it wasn't a conscious thing. It was definitely deep down somehow. And it created this kind of almost like a gag reflex in a way. I mean, it was just like letting go. And that was off of breath work. I mean, I've had the same experience with psychedelics too. So it's like, it's interesting how I think at the end of the day, like what you're saying is your nervous system slows down, or mine in that case, to a point where some underlying stuff just rears its head and comes out if you let it.
It's like the bandwidth is expanding. So I think like literally our nervous system, when it's tight, it's like it can't download files of information. It's like, oh my God, it's too much. But when our bandwidth widen, we can receive more information in the form of insights or memories, or like, oh, that's that problem that I now realize it's connected to. And what also happens when you widen your bandwidth is that your consciousness is expanded as well. So now like you're not just seeing reality through the lens of your fears or what you're afraid will happen, but you start to see reality clearly for what it is. And you're less stuck in what Cartman calls the drama triangle, where you look for a villain, you look for a victim, you often feel like the victim, and then you blame someone as the villain, and then you look to be saved from your situation. And that's the kind of black and white thinking or binary perspectives that we have access to when our nervous systems are tight. Yeah. So really it does come back to, to your question of like, well, if we can calm our nervous systems, expand our nervous systems, then we can release these out of our system. And then that's when we don't actually have to do anything. And like, there's a coach, Kyle Cease, he used to be a comedian. Do you know him? And he has this funny joke where he's like, you don't have to analyze it. It's kind of like when a cavity comes out. It's not like you're like, wait, dentist, can I see the cavity? Like, let me look at it. Let me analyze it. I wonder what sugar or food it came from. It's like, no, like it's coming up to go out. Right. So when you're feeling the emotion, just trust that it's on the way out. So you don't have to grab onto it and be like, wait, let me understand it first.
Yeah. So it's almost like the realizations themselves, like the fact that you realize, okay, this is attached to this thing. And now that I realize it, it's almost like the power is taken away. It's like, okay, I get why that is happening now. And then your brain just starts to eventually phase it out.
Unravel
it.
Or at least that part of it.
It's like this trust that like, wow, my nervous system expanded enough that I was able to receive that new insight. Like this is a new, so I really feel that every time our nervous system kind of uncoils, we have access to new insights that we couldn't see before.
Sure.
You know, so just trust that like, oh, this is all signs and I'm continuing to expand, you know, and where we get stuck and hung up on it is when we get really hard on ourselves, right? We catch something, we're like, oh shit, I'm doing it again. I thought I grew past this. What's wrong with me? I keep repeating the same patterns. And like that relationship to it is actually what's keeping it, holding it on.
So how do we stop that? Because I feel like, the analytical brain is always going to fight that, you know, and so
the analytical brain wants to make it complicated.
Sure. You know? Of course. Yeah. It shouldn't be complicated, but we're just so damn resilient or driven somehow. Like, have you found ways to is it just repetition and just keep doing the work and then slowly that analytical side, maybe to like some underlying thing just quiets down more? Do you kind of have an approach to that?
Yeah, I do think it comes back again, like, well, one, can we do the things that make us and train our nervous system to expansion? So I touched on the framework, but what I'd love to do is tell you a little bit about like what gets us to expansion and how can we start to live from there, you know, because this will answer your question. So one of the first things, like when I see hustle, I think about, okay, our first jobs out of school, or we're trying to prove that like we've got something to offer the world, you know, so there's a lot of proving maybe in our 20s. And then when we get to the next phase, you realize like, oh, I do matter. I'm not asking, do I matter anymore? I realize I do matter. And then when we realize we do matter, the natural extensions, we want to start working on something that matters, right? This is when we get into impact and contribution. And for some of us, it takes a whole lifetime to figure out that, oh, okay, once I'm secure in myself, the question is like, how do I serve? And so one of the things that I talk about in the book is the difference in toxic fuels that are really driven by this need to prove something that is based in contraction. And I believe that when we're motivated by a need to prove something, it's when we burn out, right? It's a very like unsustainable fuel that poisons you and your environment and your teams. When you get to more sustainable motivating fuels, one of the first layers of that is when we connect to our sense of mission or our sense of purpose. And so when we start to connect to our why, we start to be able to pull ourselves out of any small limiting belief or story and like really stand in, wow, like this is what I'm here to do, you know, and that feels really expansive to stand in your mission statement. Another thing that every coach learns, whether it's business or life coaching, is like to uncover your values, right? It's almost like your inner compass for what matters most to you. And, you know, what your values are going to look different from someone else's. And I'm not talking ethics. I'm talking like maybe beauty is one of your values or fun is one of your values, you know? And so the more you can live out and honor your values at like a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, the more you're going to be motivated and driven by this more expansive, sustaining fuel of motivation. And then the other thing that I think really allows you to access expansion to live from here is to choose the things that feel like play for you. You know, I can tell with how much like laughing you're doing here and like your relationship that this is fun for you.
For sure.
Right? Like,
good. It's coming out.
Yeah. And like kids, you don't need to motivate children to play, you know? So as an adult, if we find the thing that lights us up, like it's play, that's when we access like our flow state or peak performance or this like zone of genius, really. And, you know, I think that some people get caught up in like, well, what am I good at? What can I do? And then they're like, oh, I'm doing things I don't love, but I'm really good at. And I'm afraid I'm not going to get paid if I do what I love, you know, but it's actually, you start to access your capacity of like your full human potential when you're doing what feels like play for you. And so these are some of the things that I help my clients really access and delegate anything that they don't love. And something that your listeners can do right now is to actually make a list of the things that feel like a 10 for you, very life-giving, very fun. They feel like play when you do them. So that could be like sports if you enjoy certain sports. It could be a podcast host, that's one of the activities you love to do. It could be biking, whatever it is. I encourage all of your listeners to start to cue in on like what lights me up. Like, what are the things that I'm doing that I feel expanded when I do it? And there are 112 waking hours in a week. So it's important to ask yourself, like, oh, what percentage of my waking days am I spent in expansion? And so the more we can entrain our nervous system to operate from here, doing what we love, doing what feels like play, the easier it is to start to operate from our zone of genius, from our flow state, whatever you want to call it. And this is the state that I really believe is where people start to access things like psychic downloads, the unity consciousness of we're all one, being able to really read almost like densities invisible to the naked eye in terms of information, or manifest visions instantaneously, all these spiritual concepts that I think sound a little woo. I really do believe that when you can start to live from the state of expansion, you access this 0-point field of, in quantum physics, it's the fields of infinite possibility and probability from which physical reality is arises from. So anyway, those are some of the things that I talk about in the book, because I really do think this meta framework that we're talking about is what's behind not just peak performance, not just self-development, but it's also behind real magic. As long as if you believe in that, it is about, the mystery of the unknown.
So what if you make a list of all of the things that you're passionate about and you're really excited about, and you look through it and none of it feels, for lack of a better word, monetizable, right? None of it feels like, okay, I could make a career out of this. What would you say to somebody who has that experience?
Yeah. So I would say the first thing is to get your state, your energetic state, to be living more of your hours and more of your days from expansion. Because again, like, it feels very black and white when you're in contraction. When you're in contraction, you're like, oh, I have to stay at this job or else I will, I won't have a paycheck. Or like, it's either quit or stay at my job. You don't even see the other possibilities of like, maybe I can change to a different job at my current company. Or, it's like, again, infinite possibilities are only accessible when you start to feel more expanded in your nervous system. So my first, really, like, when the clients come find me, none of us can guess who they're going to become on the other side of the work. It's almost like you don't actually know who you are when you're living under the limitations that you don't even see, because you're living this contractive, narrowed option of reality. And so it's almost like you're living in black and white and not realizing that. And then when you do this work and you expand your nervous system, you all of a sudden have access to all those colors and richness. And so, I think there's people who come to my work who don't realize that the most empowering solution for them would be to shut down their very successful company that they've built, And so it's often like a really non-obvious answer that might not be like either stay or quit your job. And so the first key is really like, unravel the nervous system, start living your days from a place where you have more access to this inspiration, creativity, more possibility, not this black and white thinking. And I believe once you do, it becomes very obvious where these anchors are in your life that need to go. It's when we're conditioned to being in contraction that we don't see the relationship that's not healthy. We don't see the job that's hurting us, or the how we're showing up, our family dynamics. It's almost like we're just so used to being contracted that we're like, that's just how life is. And whenever you see someone break through, you're like, oh, that person's lucky. Like, I can't happen for me, but for that person, they're lucky that it worked out for them. And that's the consciousness of, coming from the state of contraction. Yeah. And once you start to live more of your days where you're like a 10, whether it doesn't have to be what you do for a living yet. It could be like, I start my days and I go for a swim, or I wake up and I go, I go for a hike on my break, or I just start to eat like things that make me feel really good when I eat them. And it's almost like just starting to access the state of abundance of, wow, like I'm investing in me. Like I'm, it's at the end of the day, it all comes back to like, I'm the investment, and start to treat yourself that way. Then it becomes really crystal clear when something needs to go. And that's really the main piece, is like making it start to create contrast in your life, right? So that those rubs become really apparent. And then those friction points, while they seem kind of annoying, like we don't like friction in our life, to really trust that all that friction is really your curriculum for your growth, like it's all your soul curriculum. It's all meant to happen for you so that you can up level. Yeah. Like all the friction in your life is just showing you where your next up level is going to come from.
The whole thing of like feeling like you're under this veil of whatever, like it's once you do the work, because once you do some of the woo-woo-ness of the sounding of, some people might be listening and be like, oh my God, I don't get it. Like, like you said, like some people are just like, they're lucky. Like they're into the woo-woo stuff. I guess they drank the Kool-Aid, but it's like, no, it's real because it is all energy. I mean, it's science. And once you chill out your body and your emotions, you really do feel like everything's brighter. Like there's like this bigger perception of the world and what's possible. And it's so damn hard to describe that. And yeah, like things like drugs can help you, but also just your personal, breath, the thing that we all have for free. I love Wim Hof. His saying is just breathe, motherfucker. It's just like, we all have breath, so do it.
Totally. The reason why breathwork is trending, yoga trends, meditation's trending, self-care is trending is because the world is so wound up. Our nervous systems are so wound up right now, especially during the pandemic, and that's what we need, is to relax our nervous systems is really step one. And to your point about it sounding woo-woo, this was the key challenge. And really, I think why I do what I do, because the clients I work with are very analytical. They tend to be engineers, and they consider themselves agnostic, atheist, nihilist. Like they're not spiritual. They don't have a yoga practice. They don't meditate before we work together. So being able to meet them with language that resonates. And as you heard me talk about this contraction versus expansion, you notice that like I'm not talking about anything that takes a leap of faith. It's all stuff that can be felt in your personal experience. And I do believe that is the deepest way to learn, is through people's personal experience. And so the book is designed to really like create exercises and tools that give you this personal experience of what it's like to start bending your reality.
Yeah. No, I mean, the book's going to be really, it sounds amazing. The fact, just the title alone, bending reality is like, yeah, there is a different reality if you choose for it, choose to lean into that and work it. What are some other things that folks will get out of the book? And I know you also offer training and some other stuff on your side. So I'm just kind of curious, like, what's the future look like for you in this work?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, you talked a little bit about psychedelics, for instance. And so on my website, you can actually find my live recorded audio guides of me taking people through their journey on psilocybin. Wow. So those are available online. Those are really fun. The topics range from I release control to it's never too late to have a happy childhood, to remember your future and becoming your highest self. So those are sort of the topics for those 3 to 4 hour audio guides that people can find on my website, which is www.victoriasong.me. And then I really think of the book Bending Reality as how do we really do the work between these peak experiences to integrate what we've learned and touched, right? I really encourage my clients not to just chase the next expansive experience, but to really start to ground and stabilize and integrate this new nervous system awareness so that this is a new baseline. This is my new normal. And so the book really teaches that without any use of substances. The only thing that is a little bit altered state is the breath work that I teach in the book. But I do think there's so much we can do to again, bend reality that is through our truth, our essence, who we are. Like we really don't need much. The book is really designed to almost be like your self-healer. Like it's empowering everyone to know how to empower themselves to do this work. And then if you do choose to bring on a guide, I always encourage people to find people whose life shows they know it. You might think you know something, but if your life doesn't show it, you don't actually know it, And so it's all about embodiment and finding teachers who really reflect what you're trying to learn. The book is, again, Bending Reality, and it is a tool that is used by billionaires, tech founders, truly the world's most successful individuals who are left brain analytical and have been able to find results that start to make them question, like, do we live in a simulation? Like, this is strange.
Yeah.
So if you're down, if you're excited for a journey like that, where you can start to access your own supernatural abilities that I believe only appear supernatural from a certain, level of consciousness. Like on this side of consciousness, it seems crazy, some of these topics that we've been talking about. But again, once you've tasted and experienced it yourself, you're like, wow, okay. Yeah. I don't believe anything. It's just my life right now.
Yeah, just accept it because there's more to it that you haven't seen yet or experienced. Yeah, no, it's cool. And we all have the tools for it too. It's not like some expensive endeavor, to experience some of this. So
for sure.
This is really cool, Victoria.
Breathwork is free.
It is.
Very cool. Well, the book is coming out August 24th. This episode will be released before that, but it looks like you can pre-order it on Amazon already. So,
actually, where is the best place for people to grab it? Like,
you can get it on Amazon. You can get it on my website. Cool. It's being distributed by Simon & Schuster. So really wherever books are sold, you can pre-order it on their site. And I'm also encouraging people to pre-order now, and I'm giving all sorts of free techniques, like guided breathwork is one of the free techniques that you get now. Also, in 15 minutes, you can create your own mission statement. So I have a guide that helps you connect to your purpose, helps you connect to your values, as we talked about today. And then also there's a technique that helps you release any stress or anxiety that you're feeling in a moment. So if you notice any contraction in your nervous system, there's a guided technique. They're all audio guides, by the way. Mm-hmm. So they're all as a thank you for pre-ordering now.
Sweet. Well, thank you, Victoria. Thanks for doing this work and sharing it with us today. It's been fun.
Thanks for having me. This was so much fun.
Yes. See you later.
All right. Bye-bye.